Howdy folks, let's solve the Leetcode question. Actually, every day I feel like I'm stressing out for preparing the video for the Leetcode instead of like trying to solve the daily Leetcode problem by myself. But at the end, I slowly enjoy explaining the problem to someone else. I'm like making a YouTube video. I'm getting like slowly having a passion about it. See how far I can go. So the Leetcode problem is increment set metric by 1. So we're given a positive integer of n, indicating that we have initially have an n cross n zero index integer matrix, which is a mat, a field with the zeros. So that means if we are given the 1 n is equal to 1, that means we are having the item like matrix which is 1:1. Another case, what if n is equal to 2? So that will be like this. I think I better explain like this in here. So if it's the n value is 2, the actual value will be like this. 0 and 0, 0. So that is 2. So the same for the 3. So we add a 1 to every element in the submatrix with the top left corner and row 1, column 1. So we can check in the query, which is just a two-dimensional integer array, and then each array contains of 2 index. That is a matrix index, which is a row and column and row and column. That means like we can access the matrix by using the query of index 0, 1 is a 1 index, and 0, 1, and 2 is another index. So every element in the submatrix with the top left corner, so row 1, column 1, and then the bottom right corner, row 2, column 2. That means the values given in here are the diagonally provided, something like top left and bottom right. And then that is add 1 to the mat x1 for all row 1 is less than or equal to x and less than or equal to row 2. The same for the column 1 and column 2, which is in between them. So let's go through some of the examples given by the Leetcode. So if I have to explain, so what I would like to mention in here is we are given the 2 query in here. Actually, this is a 1 query, but that includes the 2 index. 2 index means the combination of the row and column. So the first index we can consider is let's talk about the first query. So in here, the example is a 1, 1. That means a 1 and 1, which is similar to the top left corner. That's why we are seeing the top left corner in here. And then row 2, column 2, which is a 2, 2. So which make us here for the 2, 2. That is matched with this value. And then that make us the bottom right corner of the submatrix. So if we solve the diagonal of the top left and bottom right, we need to add the 1 to the missing item, x and y. So x and y mean like we have a row. So let's call this is a row. So we need to fill this whole row filled with the 1. The same for the column. If we know this column or this column, we need to fill this column with the missing y. So we don't go over that row and we don't go over that column. That is the intuition for that. Alright, so let's go through for the example 1. And let me try to draw the diagram in here so that we could easily debug during the explanation. And then I want to use a dark color, so which is help us to highlight in here. Right, I will just look as a dark color, and then which will be 3:3. Go like this. Sorry for the very ugly matrix, even though it doesn't look like the real matrix. If you guys have an OCD, sorry about that. Let's consider we have all 0 at initially. 0, 0, 0. 0. So that's the base case. After we receive the positive n integer, we're gonna create the two-dimensional matrix on the spot, and then we go through the query. So the query provide like 1 row 1 column 1, which is okay, I need to write, okay, this is row 0 1 2, this would be the column 0 1 2. So row 1 column 1 mean we are accessing this index will begin the 1. And then next is the 2 is to 2. We accessing here. So 2 is to 2 is here. Begin the 1. So before changing all the values first, but if we have a common sense, like with not just a normal human being, not think about mathematically or logically or programmatically, so we can simply convert this into 1. Because this is in the range of the submatrix. What do I mean by submatrix? Since we know the diagonal, this is a submatrix in here. And then we slightly update this with a 1. So next index is a 0 is to 0, which began the 1, and the 1 is to 1. Since it's already 1, we increment by 1, but began the 2. Since we have this diagonal in here, we need to update this with 1. This is 1. So that is the answer what we need to return in here. So which means 1 1 0, which is in here, 1 2 1, which is in here, and the 0 1 1, which is in here. And then yeah, that's pretty much it for the increment 1. So for the increment 2, that's given as like the 2 index of the matrix. So that makes us a 4 zeros in the matrix. And then we know like 0 0 is a 1, 1 1 is a 1. So we fill all the values with the 1s. That is the answer. So how are we going to do that? So if we're going to check that, what we can do is, after we know the input value from the, let me update it, and how to delete it real quick. 0, delete that also, delete that, and then wait, I'm gonna duplicate that for easier for us to understand back. So okay, what I want to do, so if I know the answer, or like if I know the query, so if it is in the initial range, I will update it. Let's say it's a 1 1, I will directly update it. But for the next iteration, what I would do is I would take the row plus 1. No, that means I will check the column. Since we know the rows and column here, I will check the second iteration is the column plus 1, which means like we're checking the column 2, which is a 2 plus 1 is less than the n. I just want to check the scope we want to put is still in the middle of the matrix. If it is not, we're not going to update it. So let me write a little bit in here. Okay, the first thing first, what we need to do is just follow the element in here. Let's call the variable is a mat, which is a matrix. So we need to create the array, which is repeating of the array, and then repeating 0 with the count of n, and then the total count is also n in here. That is the initial matrix. And then we need to go through the query. What do I mean by queries? Let's call like queries. Since I don't want to access the query by using the index, I will make my life much easier. Let's call like row 1, which is a queue of query of 0. So which is also provided here, row 1. And then we need the column 1. Let's call like C1. which will be the query of, also sorry guys, query of 1. And then let's go like R2, which is the row 2, which will be the query of 2. And then the same for the, let's call it column 2, which will be the query of 3. So we are just accessing here. And then what we need to do is I'm gonna check in here. So I just want to check, we are going to iterate like from row 1 through the row 2. So if we are going through the row 1 to row 2, what we need to update is we're gonna update the metrics of the row 1 and row 1 column 1, since we are now going through the row by row. And then we're gonna plus equal to 1. Since the original value is 0, we're gonna 0 plus 1 will be the 1. So which means we are creating this one to 1. So I will be going like back and forth between my drawing and code so that you guys can have a visualization much better. And then next step, what I want to do is I want to check the our column 2, which is in this one. Why I need to check the column 2? Since I want to check how far our column can go through. Since we know the rows in here, we want to check what is the last column we can go through. So it's pretty straightforward. We just plus 1 to the column and then check like less than to n, which is a matrix value. So if less than to n, we're gonna update like our row 1 in column 2 plus 1 is minus equal to 1. So why I put like minus equal to 1? So I just want to note that like if we saw the minus 1, we want to stop it. So it is, which is like a stopping point for us. Minus 1. So in here, since the C2, which is a column 2, is 2, value of 2. So let's write down for you guys. Row 2 is also 2. So this is 1. This is also 1. Since the C2 is a 2, 2 plus 1 is 3. So that would be the condition of false. So we are not going to enter that. And next step I want to do is I can forward to the next row, which I need to update the R1 plus equal to 1. Since this is a static variable constant, I'm going to change it to the var so we can change it in the next time. So okay, like fast forward, what we are going to receive is so we done for the row 1, so we iterate to the row 2. So row began 2. So we're gonna check like 2 is less than or equal to R2, which is 2. So that's correct. And then we enter truth like this. So R1 began the 2 is like 2 of the 1. So which is the 2 of 1 mean like 2 of 1. So we can update in here like 1. So that's what I'm doing. And then we're going to still check that condition since the C2 is already 2, 2 plus 1 is 3. So that's change anything. And then we increment the row 1 into the plus 1, which make us the 3. So if we check the condition here, 3 is definitely sure not less than or equal to 2. So we're going to skip the while loop. And then we enter to the second query, which began this query in here, 0011. Let's call it like 0011. So we're gonna go back from the beginning again since it is a new query. So R1 is a 0, and then we're gonna check like it's equal to R2, which is 1. That's true. So we're gonna enter to the matrix of 1, which is R1 is a 0, and then C1 is also the 0. So if it is true, 0 is 0, this is here. So we're gonna update the initial index of the matrix into 1, and then we're gonna check the condition. So since the C2 is a 1, 1 plus 1 is 2, so 2 is definitely less than the 3. So here's where the real condition and real interesting part of this problem come in. So let's say R1, which is a 0, and then C2, which is 1 plus 1 is 2. We're going to put 0 F2 into minus 1. So we don't know why we put the minus 1 at the moment. So let's keep it like this for now. Now we increment the R1 into the next step, which is R1. So we're going to check like 1 is definitely less than or equal to 1. So we enter to the R1 and C1, which is R1 is a 1 here, C1 is a 0 in here. So which is a 1 of 0. 1, 0 is here. So we change it to the 1. And then we check the condition C2, which is a 1 plus 1 is 2. So we enter to the if condition, and then we check like R1 is 1 in here, and then C2 plus 1, which is a 1 plus 1 is 2. So 1 of 2 is the minus 1. 1 of 2 is minus 1. And yeah, so we increment the R1 into plus 1, which is become the 2. So that will definitely leave our iteration through the query array. So that's pretty much done. But if you check, after we're done with the query, we have not done with our final answer yet. So we still need to calculate our final answer. So we just need to return the math as a result at the end. What we need to check in here is we need to go through every single item in the matrix one by one. So that's pretty straightforward. Let's call like row. This we are going through like row and column. We like 0 dot dot into the last item of the end, and then which will be the we need the okay, let's call like column in. So that's pretty straightforward. We are going in just like 0 0 0 1 0 2 1 0 1 1 1 2, things like that. So what I want to do is I may need the one variable in here. Let's call current is 0. What I want to do is I want to calculate the current plus equal to a matrix of row and column. So what's the 0 0 do? So that 0 0 is straightforward. So we check like the 0 is 1, so current is 0. So if we add the 1 into the 0, that will become the 1, and then we will update our matrix of row and column with the current. I think even if I don't want to use a new variable, I can save it. No. Yeah, we need a current variable for sure. So I update the current into the 1. So next step, enter. So we're gonna check like current is a 1. And then we are now in the index of 0 row and 1 column, which is a 1. So 0 plus 1 is 1. So we update it. So that will begin the 1. Then that will begin the 1 also. So which will begin 1. But if we update like this, since the current is already 1, and then this is 0, so which will make us the 1. So next step, what we want to do is I'm gonna check like 1 plus. So now we are in this index 0 row and 2 column. So our current is 1. We check the value, which is something like this. Current plus equal to minus 1. So the reason why we have a minus 1 here, that is where I mentioned in the beginning of the videos. We want to keep that minus 1 as a stopping point. If we saw the minus 1, we're going to stop. So minus 1 plus 1 will begin the 0. So which will make us the 0 in here. And then next, we're going to go through like same, since it is a 1. So 0 plus 1 is 1, since the current is reset back to the 0. And then next, 1 plus 1 began the 2. Right, and then 2 minus 1 began the 1. the same. We enter in the here. So since the initial value is 0, which is a 0, and then 0 plus 1 is 1, 1 plus 0 became the 1. So which we create as the array of matrix. That is the exact answer that we want for the output. So that's pretty much for our solution, and let's try to submit it and see it's work or not. Alright, here we go. Where did I make a mistake? Same old me making the typo. Alright, I think for the time complexity, that will be the O of n into m. So n will be the number of metrics, and m will be the query. Yep, I hope. Oh yeah, we also need to consider for the query. And then for the space complexity, that will be the O of n squared, since we iterated through in here. Right. Thank you for seeing this video, and then see you in the next one. And have a great weekend. Bye.